Solomon is a blind 10-year-old boy living with his mother after his father abandoned them and fled to an unknown destination. Trying to stay away from people and other irritants, the family is hidden away in a cabin in the middle of the woods where they enjoy a quiet, peaceful, and measured life. The inquisitive boy loves to go for walks, but does so only after tying himself to the house with a tether so that he doesn't get lost and always has a chance to return home. Going to the forest, mother and son check the traps, which are made especially for the blind man. Before checking the trap, the boy finds empty tin cans and then locates the traps. Upon returning home, Solomon learns how to milk Molly the goat and cut up his prey to provide food. At one of these moments, blood gets on his mother's face, making her very angry, but the woman cannot swear at her son. Teaching him the rules of life in the forest, the mother asks Solomon to share food with the forest, expressing her gratitude to him. The next morning is the boy's birthday, so he and the mother go fishing. At one point, Solomon suggests getting rid of the ineffective plastic hooks and goes into the woods to find worms, but discovers an old chain. He tries to pull on it, but the mother notices it in time and takes her son home, forbidding him to visit that part of the forest. In the evening, the woman's health deteriorates and she coughs a lot, but still prepares a birthday cake and asks to blow out the candle, making a wish. At night, she also does not take a step away from her son and sings lullabies to him. Soon after, Solomon's mother leaves home and disappears forever, presumably having fallen victim to a large predator. Several years later, Solomon continues to live deep in the forest, in a lonely cabin far from civilization and other people. With no one but his goat Molly, the boy tries to survive in terrible conditions. Solomon is limited by blindness, so he constantly listens to a tape recorder left by his mother before she left home for good. The woman asked her son to follow 3 rules: be grateful to and respectful of the forest, share food with the forest, and never, under any circumstances, leave the house without a rope. It is his only guide and hope of returning home. So Solomon must remember to tie himself up before he sets out on a walk, hunt, or gather his catch. Strictly adhering to this rule, the blind boy wraps a rope around himself and goes into the woods. Trying to find old tin cans, he checks nearby traps and finds a rabbit. Remembering to share with the forest, Solomon throws some of the leftover food into the bushes nearby. If he gets particularly sad and lonely, the boy sings a song his mother used to sing when he was very young. These memories and his mother's voice are the only thing that gives Solomon faith and strength to go on living. One morning, the boy heads to the lake to go fishing. Unable to see the potential catch and the fishing rod, the blind man attaches a bell to it, which reacts to any movement. After catching only one fish, Solomon checks the fish and crayfish trap, but it is completely empty. At times like these, he feels weak and frustrated, hiding in the woods and looking up at the sky, trying to find a new incentive to continue living. Solomon's laughter becomes hysterical, and his moods change as often as the wind direction. Despite these challenges, he resiliently overcomes all obstacles, continuing to live, hunt, and eat well. A few days later, Solomon goes into the forest again to check the traps. Unfortunately for him, they are all empty, so the blind man has to dine on porridge, giving up meat and fish. At one point, he hears a strange sound like the growling of a wild animal coming from deep in the forest. Solomon would like to rush there and see what kind of animal it is, but is afraid to take a step forward. With no weapon and no way to see the enemy, the boy returns home and listens to his late mother's advice again. At night, Solomon can't sleep and decides to go outside to check on his goat. After putting on his shoes and tying himself to the house with a rope, the lad heads to Molly's house, but he hears that she has gone too far. He tries to find the goat by feel, as he suddenly feels blood and realizes that the animal is injured. The guy would like to save Molly and help her, but suddenly an unknown monster drags her deep into the forest. The blind man takes it hard, as the goat was his only friend and an additional source of food. Returning to the house only at dawn, Solomon checks his food supplies, realizing that he has only a little porridge and canned food left, after which he is doomed to starvation. Another foray into the forest is fruitless, as all the traps are once again empty. Realizing that he has no other way to get food, Solomon becomes depressed. Sitting down near one of the trees, he is reluctant to return home when suddenly he hears a gunshot. Orienting himself to the sound, Solomon goes there and finds the corpse of a deer. The guy would like to steal the prey, but behind it comes an aggressive hunter who is not going to share his trophy. Meeting a living person for the first time in many years, the blind man is frightened and defends himself with a knife in his hands. Mistaking him for an aggressive and dangerous teenager, the hunter knocks the guy out with a single blow of his rifle butt to the head. A short while later, Solomon regains consciousness and reacts aggressively again, despite the man trying to treat the wound on his head. Hearing familiar sounds, the blind man realizes that the hunter has brought him home, but does not understand the purpose of such an act. The hunter, whose name is Hank, notices the rope and assumes that there is something particularly important at the other end, since the guy wants to go back there. He wasn't a threat and wouldn't hurt the teen, he just didn't want to be robbed or attacked with a knife. Realizing Solomon is safe, Hank returns his late father's knife to him. The hunter asks to shelter him for the night and promises to share a deer as a thank you for providing a bed. With no food supplies, Solomon agrees and allows Hank to stay with him for the night. Upon arriving home, Hank is preparing dinner for two when he suddenly hears strange noises. Looking outside, he notices that Solomon is using a special device to chop wood with an axe fixed between wooden planks. Realizing that the boy is busy and unlikely to hear anything, Hank climbs into the attic and finds an album of songs that Solomon's mother used to sing to him at bedtime. Before dinner, the guy goes back to his apartment and listens to his mother's audio recording again. Meanwhile, Hank studies the album with the lyrics and checks his books and notebooks, finding quite a few interesting things about the blind man's family. During dinner, Hank offers Solomon his help so the boy can get out of the woods and back into society, but he doesn't want to. At night, as the hunter falls asleep, the blind man approaches him with a knife. He seems ready to go to extreme measures and attack the man, but changes his mind at the last moment, realizing that Hank is not a threat. Sometime later, Solomon and Hank are awakened by a terrible animal cry coming from the forest. After looking around and finding nothing suspicious, the hunter decides to conduct a battlefield reconnaissance to find and destroy the monster terrorizing the defenseless teenager. To do this, he finds a flashlight and, taking a rifle, goes deep into the forest. 100 meters from the boy's house, Hank finds a fresh animal corpse and realizes that the monster that attacked him is somewhere close. Orienting on the sound, the hunter makes a shot, but clearly misses. The monster notices him and attacks Hank with a wild scream, but he manages to escape, returning to the blind man's house alive and unharmed. Going up to the second floor, the hunter calms Solomon down. The guy keeps humming his mother's song and is on the verge of a nervous breakdown, realizing that he is not safe. Hank would like to save the lad and get him out of here, but the beast is unlikely to let them do that. Waking up early in the morning, the hunter notices that Solomon has disappeared and goes in search of him. As it turns out, the teenager has gone to the barn since the morning and uses whatever is at hand to create a new defense and trap for the big animal. Hank is willing to help the orphaned teenager, as he has plenty of building materials, but lacks some kind of chain that can tie all these elements together. Solomon reports that he saw a suitable chain earlier, but was unable to bring it from the woods because it was tied to something. Once in the woods, Solomon demonstrates surprising skills for a blind man in navigating the open terrain. Unfortunately for him, the traps are empty again, and Hank sees this, but also notices the chain hidden under the fall leaves. The hunter tries to retrieve the chain, but it goes deep into the burrow and is clearly attached to something. Scared of the bird and not wanting to get inside, Hank bites off the chain with special tools and returns home to finish making a new trap. Discovering that they still have plenty of food, Solomon takes a piece of deer and throws it into the bushes nearby. Such an act not only shocks the hunter, but also makes him realize why the wild animal is hunting nearby. Solomon regularly feeds the predator, and that's bad enough. But the hunter can use the situation to trap the monster and get rid of it once and for all. Hank then offers to get rid of the rope and promises to teach the guy how to control his fear. The hunter makes a rope out of cloth and securely ties its pieces with a nautical knot. Determined to continue hunting, Hank and Solomon head into the woods, taking along a rifle and a large trap. At one point, something grabs the guy by the rope and starts dragging him away, but the hunter saves Solomon. Realizing that the blind man is too defenseless, Hank offers to return home and calms the teenager. Trying to support him in his time of need, Hunter reveals that he has found his mother's diary. The first entries and memories seem sweet and pleasant, but on the next page, Hank finds drawings of a chain, followed by text that should not be read to the deceased woman's son. At night, when Solomon goes to bed, Hank decides to do whatever he can to help the boy. Taking a flashlight, another trap, and a weapon, he goes into the woods and tries to track down the monster. The hunter prepares a trap and checks the surroundings, as he suddenly finds another hut assembled from branches. After checking it, he finds a diary, just like the one in Solomon's house. It clearly belongs to the boy's late mother, but here the entries are even more frightening. At the same time, Solomon is trying to find the missing hunter, when suddenly he hears a gunshot. Tying himself with a tether, the lad hurries to the sound, but it is a little farther from the house than he had walked before. Having untied himself, the teenager descends a steep rise and finds Hank's corpse. This is also where he hears the sound of a monster nearby. Grabbing a knife, Solomon tries to defend himself, not realizing who or what will attack him. Feeling scared, the boy starts humming his mom's tune as suddenly the monster starts singing along. It becomes clear that the monster is Solomon's mother, who turned out to be a werewolf and abandoned her son so as not to put him in danger. Overjoyed that his mother is alive, Solomon embraces her, but is immediately stabbed and executed for taking the life of Hank, the only one who has been kind to the teenager. The story seems to end there, as it suddenly becomes clear that Solomon is a werewolf with a wild beast awakened in him with no tether to restrain him.